The Nuggets are still the Lakers' daddy. Michael Malone is now the winningest coach in franchise history. Is Jokic having the best start to a season ever? Plus, we'll preview the Knicks versus the Nuggets. And, Russell Westbrook's playing great. We'll talk about all that and more. No Jinx on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making this part of your day, and being an everydayer. Hanging out with us Monday through Friday. We do have shows for you every day of the week, as well as post-game shows after every Nuggets game, and the postcast coming to you from Anil over at Mile High Sports. So much great stuff for you on this feed. We hope you guys enjoy it. Let us know if you do by giving us a 5-star review and a like and subscribe over at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets, where we are honing in on 8,000 subscribers. I want to hit 10 this season. I want to get there, and I need your help to do it. So go to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Take 1 second and subscribe. It will not take long. Send it to a friend. Send the show. Be like, hey, I think you'll like this show, because it helps us out so much. Word of mouth, right? We're not paying for advertising. Don't have that kind of reach. So make sure to do that. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Ryan Blackburn. He's from Mile High Sports, and he's on the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. And this is No Jinx for a Monday. We're going to talk about Michael Malone on today's show, but we're also going to hit on Nikola Jokic and his historic pace. And this is the best start for a player ever. We'll talk about MPJ and Russ stepping up big time, and we will preview Monday night's game versus the New York Knicks at Ball Arena. Glad to have you guys with us. Ryan, let's start here.
Yes, sir.
What was the first Malone presser you ever went to?
Oh, the first one. So one of my first times being in Ball Arena was in the 2016-17 season. Malone had less hair then somehow. It was very interesting sort of reverse psychology thing at that point, but he was a different person at that point, somebody who had been through the gamut a little bit less than he had been. Obviously still very jaded from the experience that he had from Sacramento, and definitely a little bit more on edge even than he is now. He still kept his edge, but I remember back in some of those days, 2016-17, I was just kind of like flying in, fly off the wall, just parachuting in for some of these pressers, and very scared to talk in those, and have sort of gotten over that fear of late. But he's very similar in a lot of ways too, though. He's I think 2016-17, that was the OKC comeback game, but not the late one, the early one that happened early in that year where they were up 10 and they come back, and it was just a horrible, horrible time. But times haven't changed, or maybe they have.
It's interesting to kind of be. I have commented a lot on Jokic and what it's like to be on this side of history with Jokic, where I remember when he was a goofy kid. Like, I remember when he was driving a not very impressive vehicle. Now he drives a very nice vehicle.
Yes.
That I remember like when he was like a goofy kid, and now he's like wearing suits and is, father of two and the whole shebang. And with Malone, he was, I'll just say, like, Malone really attacked this job. Like, I think it is lost oftentimes on fans because they only, like, you really do. You see clips from the pressers if there's a notable question, and you see the in-game stuff, like, oh, he subbed out this guy, he subbed out that guy. Oh, he was yelling on the sideline because he was so mad. Oh, he got teed up and ejected. But like, you don't see him in such a day-to-day environment, and we see such a small fraction of it. I'm always hesitant, but I kind of commented on this the other night, just of Malone from the very beginning. It wasn't like this job is going to be really brutal and very difficult, and that's bad. Like, Malone was like, yeah, this is going to be really hard. I'm so excited for it. And that to me is like the difference. So to see him on this other side, having won a title, having won all these playoff games, and having become unquestionably the greatest coach in Nuggets franchise history, which like that's a big bar with Doug Moe. And George was here for a decade and won a lot of games. And he didn't win a lot of playoff series, but he won a lot of games. And for Malone to have become the winningest coach ever, for him to stick around this long, for him to have never lost the locker room, there were so many people that have said that Malone's a quote hothead and all these types of things. And he's fiery, because I think if you're not going to make it, because you got to want to do this job every day.
Yeah.
Like you got to want to deal with the headaches. You got to want to be like, you have to be in a place mentally where your team that has won a title is probably going to win 50 plus games this year, won 57 last year, is going to be totally fine, that you are so mad they gave up a turnover and then a transition layup, you are still going to call a rage timeout.
Yep.
And look to the rafters and look just absolutely infuriated by this because you've tried to get them to play the right way. And I don't think Malone's one of the greatest tacticians the game has ever seen, but I think he's better than he gets credit for. Yeah. And I don't think he's the greatest culture setter the game has ever seen, but I think he's better than he gets credit for. And I think that he has done the job admirably with a lot of dignity, has done it the right way, has been a professional the entire way through, even after they won the title. And I'm just really glad that somebody who cares this much and is an NBA. I have said this before. He's the lifer son of a lifer. Brendan Malone was a lifer NBA assistant coach. Michael Malone is a lifer assistant coach that became a head coach. And to see him reach this pinnacle, I think is very, very cool.
You can see guys become jaded with that. You can see, and especially folks that have been around the NBA for as long as he have been through the entire song and dance, could know that, like, hey, he could get another job elsewhere. He could be getting a little bit more credit in certain situations, taking a bad team and making them a good team. He's more likely to get a coach of the year that way. He's never going to get a coach of the year for Denver, I don't think. And that's okay. Like, Eric Spoelstra doesn't have a coach of the year, and that's a sham itself, but like, you just kind of go through it. Sometimes that's not how you're graded. And I talked about this in one of my, like in the article from last night for Mile High Sports. Jokic has masked how good Malone is as a coach in both good and bad ways. Sometimes Jokic can make up for some of Malone's sins. Sometimes Malone doesn't get a lot of credit for the great things he does because Jokic is an all-time great player. And I made this comparison as well. Think of all the top 10 players and how many elite coaches that they have all time, like Red Auerbach with Bill Russell. Eric Spoelstra has coached Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Shaq. Pat Riley coached Magic Johnson. Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant had Phil Jackson. Tim Duncan had Greg Popovich. Like, the list goes on and on. Like, coaches that you weren't really sure about how good they were going to be until they were with a great player, and then they became a great coach. And sometimes it doesn't always work one-to-one. Like, you can see how great a coach is going to be before they get the great player. But a lot of times it's about how great coaches can elevate players and help them become great, help them become the best that they can be. He has helped Nikola Jokic become the best player that he could be. He hasn't held him back. He's pushed him forward. He's asked him to be more. They have constantly pushed him to be the best, sometimes to the detriment of the rest of the team. But it has helped Denver, and I think it has made Denver a better group as a result.
There are coaches that would have never given Nikola the chance. If you want to say like, well, he was starting Nurkic. He only bubble. I hear it. I hear all that.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches would have never even if Jokic had shown it, they would not have recognized it and they would have rejected it. We've seen the reaction to Jokic league wide. It took a long time for him to earn the respect that he deserves. And I think this, to whatever degree, Malone deserves credit for that. I think that that Malone made Jokic great? No, I think that Malone helped make Jokic's teams great. And that to me is important. Yeah. On the other side, speaking of, Jokic is off to, I mean, just the numbers are just stupid. Like, they're just stupid. We're going to throw a bunch of numbers at you about how awesome Jokic is and how awesome the start is. We'll do that next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by Skims. So a big deal with me is if you're in Colorado, you need underwear that's going to be warm but breathable, because you have to wear so many layers. Stuff can get uncomfortable. ... Skims, you're never going to have that problem. It's breathable, comfortable, the whole bang, and it's warm at the same time. It's the perfect underwear, and you're never going to find anything better than that. I've always liked a good square cut 3-inch boxer brief. What I don't like is when my boxer briefs ride up, and that's never comfortable. So if you're trying to find your way through this, Skims found a way to create the perfect 3-inch stretch boxer. They give you the movement that you need throughout the day and the perfect comfort for those trips out on the road, or if you're sitting on I-25, which I wind up doing a lot going to Nuggets games. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com/lockedonnba. Let them know that we sent you. And after you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. If you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, available at skims.com/lockedonnba. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day.
I'm looking up numbers, man. I'm trying my best.
Totally fair. Totally fair. All right. Let's talk about Yoke. So as it stands, if you had told me before the season, man, that Yoke, that we were going to be at November 24th, that we're going to be at Thanksgiving, and he was going to be second in scoring, I would not have believed you. I would have been like, nope, there's no way. There's no, like, that's not how Jokic plays. And yet there he is. He is averaging 30.3 points per game, only behind Giannis Antetokounmpo at 32.4. So he is second in points. He is first in rebounds. He is now second in assists because Trae Young snuck over him at 11.7 to 11.3. He, as one does, he's shooting 57% from the field and 56% from three for a guy that had wrist problems and couldn't hit water last year. And 84% from the line. Oh, yeah. And 1.6 steals and 0.9 blocks per game. That's a thing, too, on top of 14 boards per game. Give me some more numbers on how amazing the start has been for Yoke.
Yeah, so I posted something earlier online today that the amount of numbers that he has had before totals in the first 12 games of a season, 364 points, 167 rebounds, 135 assists, just the standard old points, rebounds, and assists. It has only ever been done twice else in a 12-game span, like those kind of round number requirements. Once was by, obviously, Jokic this year, and then twice during the 2023 playoffs by Jokic. That's the only other times those numbers have been accumulated ever.
What is that? What is that?
That's crazy. And you would just assume at some point that somebody has had an all-encompassing dominant performance like this one. But no, it's just Jokic. It's just him. You could pick any advanced metric, and he's probably leading in it right now. Just looking across Basketball Reference right now, he is currently leading in box plus minus, VORP, win shares per 48, PER, assist rate. He's over 50% in total assist rate for this Nuggets team. We've talked about the on-off net ratings before. I don't necessarily want to get into that as much. The Nuggets have a plus 14 net rating when he's on the court, 128.7 offensive rating when he's on the court. He has been incredible. He has driven winning. And just the way that he continues to impact every aspect of the game is really, really important. I know that you talked yesterday or last night about his job that he did against Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis couldn't score on him, Matt. Like, this is another fellow MVP candidate, and he had nothing for him, man. Like, he was scared of Jokic. He was scared of going at him one-on-one and fell down half of the time that he tried to drive. It was unbelievable. And like the amount of fear that Jokic is instilling in other people right now is insane. The reactions that every Laker was giving when Jokic had the ball, it looked like a 5-alarm fire for every single time he touched it, every single time he rose to shoot, every single time he put the ball up by his ear to make a pass. And I know you talked about the tip last night, the near tip full court with 0.3 seconds left. Who does this, man? Nobody's doing this. This has never happened before.
It's ridiculous. It's just absolutely freaking absurd. I don't know. I really don't know how to put this stuff in context. Like I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with it because he's been so ridiculous. On-court net rating, minimum 20 minutes a game and 10 games played. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's 9th behind Karis LeVert, who is a 21.2.
On a team that's like, what, 16-1, 17-1?
Yep.
Got it.
17-1. Pretty good team.
Yeah.
Chet Holmgren, who's not going to unfortunately be with us for many games for months. Another Cav. Dylan Brooks is plus 15.6.
That's,
yeah. I tried doing like the usage thing to try and like limit it, and it gets. I'm going to put that back up here to kind of like, all right, who are the guys that actually have the ball in their hands like a lot? And so I'm going to put the usage rate at 25, and then it's Shea, and then Steph, and then Yoke. And that's with no Aaron Gordon, and that's with Jamal Murray as a shell of the idea of him. So it's like, I mean, it really is. But for me, it's also, and like, this is the important part for me from a purely statistical standpoint, right? Like I've said a lot of times that you can't really judge Nikola's games on the stats because I've seen him put up great numbers and be like, yeah, he was fine. And then I've seen him put up like 22, 7, and 9 and be like, that's one of the best games I've ever seen anybody play. But from a purely statistical standpoint, the key for me is, you know, he talked about Luka last year and was like, Luka's a one-man army. Look at everything that he does. And Jokic is now, because he has to, but he's doing that. But the problem with Luka is that it never translated to them, to the advanced metric stuff. I want to be clear on this, though. The advanced metric stuff is what we're really talking about. Like, again, this is where I get defensive of plus minus. We're just talking about, did you win or lose, and by how much? That's it. Net rating is how much did your team outscore the other team when you were on the floor, if we take it per possession and we stretch that over the course of a game, which is about 100 possessions. So if Yoke played the full 100 possessions that an average game is at, they would outscore opponents by 13.6 points while he is putting up these numbers.
Yeah.
And that's like there's no drawback. Usually it's like, oh, he put up insane numbers. And like, you got to account for some efficiency drop there. Nope. Like, this is the thing with Harden where I was like, well, yeah, you can't really blame him that his shooting numbers aren't great. Look at the volume. Jokic is shooting in volume and doing it efficiently. And he's assisting. And the team's good.
Yeah, like it's just a lot. It's
just like a lot.
I think the one most important factor in all of this, though, is that he is the tide that rises all boats around him too. And the way that he continues to empower people, I'm going to talk about this going forward for a lot of this. Michael Porter and Russell Westbrook are playing really good basketball right now. Russell Westbrook specifically, it took a little bit of an adjustment period, but he's playing really good basketball. And the Nuggets, focused on Jokic, trust their entire team to make the decisions, to make the plays that they need to make in order to be successful. Jokic is going to live with certain shots from other guys. He's going to live with other guys making mistakes because he's going to empower them and lift them up and adapt to what the team needs and what they need to be their most successful selves as well. He is willing to not get the credit. And by extension, he gets the ball a lot and then gets a lot of the credit too, because of like the way that they run their team, the way that this whole operation goes when it's focused around Jokic. He is the heliocentric star that pushes the ball back out just as much as he takes it in. Like just as much as he receives the pass, he is always giving it back out just as much. And that's so rare in what is a superstar heavy NBA right now, where you've got a lot of guys that are taking the credit. You got a lot of guys that are the main focus, and it comes down to can they perform, etc. Yes, that same thing is happening with Jokic and with his teams, but more often than not, he has also empowered the rest of this Nuggets group to be successful within what they need to do in order to be the best that they can be. And Russell Westbrook, I think, is a good example of that.
We'll talk about Russ up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Before we go to break, I just did want to add this. On StatMuse, and like, look, these are basic, like, I'm not a per game stat guy, right? I have all the, like, I love the Vorps and Schmorps. But I looked up who is averaging the most rebounds, steals, blocks, points, assists this season per game. Jokic is averaging 58 of those. Giannis is at 52.7. Then it's AD at 47.3. Like, the gap here is ridiculous. And the gap is wide between him and Giannis. And honestly, the gap between Giannis and like a lot of people is wide. Like, Giannis is having an amazing season, and it doesn't really compare with Jokic's, which is nuts.
It's crazy.
It's just really crazy. It's an insane season, insane start to the season. Jokic has been phenomenal. And all he's got to do is do it for another 70 games, 65 games.
If there's anybody that could do it, though, like, if we're being honest, it's him.
Just keep it up. All right. Up next, we'll talk about Russell Westbrook and MPJ, and we'll preview the Knicks game. We'll do that next here on Locked On Nuggets. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Broncos fans very excited after a great win versus the Raiders. Not going to get better than beating that team. I mean, that team is amazing. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You can bet Bo Nix to win NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, which I'm sure that number is getting really tight with Jaden Daniels after another loss for Daniels today. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. But just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Monday. No Jinx, Ryan Blackburn and Matt Moore with you. Let's talk about Russ. So I was chatting with a friend who's a Lakers guy, covers the Lakers. His name's Anthony Irwin. Check out his page at the Lakers Lounge. And I was like, Russ is really great tonight. I was just twisting the knife.
Yeah.
And he was like, the Russ thing won't end well. And like, that's what he says to the whole thing. And like, I've tried to be really honest about this on the show about that, I still think that the odds are 70-30 against that Westbrook is playable in the playoffs. Like, I just do, based off of the history. I have a history of Westbrook over the last 5 seasons. Like, since he left OKC, I have a history of Westbrook that I can't throw out no matter what it looks like right now. What I think is like insane is some of the numbers for Russ in terms of, well, and this is actually maybe more concerning. Some of the shooting numbers with Russ are very much like, is that going to hold? Because he had that horrific start to the season where he was missing everything. And, you know, most people were like, yeah, that sounds right. Like, he can't shoot. That tracks. And now this season, he's shooting 36% from 3-point range. And if you take out the first 2 games, he's like north of league average 37%. Now, I think what Westbrook's really done, he was brought on to bring the energy and the intensity and change the pace and all these types, and he's done that. And I just think he's been so good defensively. He's been disruptive. he's made huge plays. He's locked in. Like Westbrook's defense has legitimately been impactful. He has been very good on that end.
Right.
What I will ask you this as somebody that like, and as soon as they signed him, I was like, oh, Ryan's going to hate this. I knew that this was going to be a thing. What's it been like for you watching Westbrook?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have had to square away the times where he takes a specific shot that I don't agree with, that I don't think is within the flow or the right place for the ball to end up, with the idea that the overall impact and the energy that he brings and the stuff that he continues to add to Denver that wasn't here last year is still really good, is still really valuable. The playmaking and the overall level of facilitating and willingness to put the ball into other people's hands after he creates opportunities, I think has been really impressive. Honestly, like 6.2 assists per game so far. And per 100 possessions, he's at 11.9 assists per game, or assists per 100 possessions. If I go back and, I mean, I don't want to hammer this point home too hard, but Reggie Jackson, if I do the same thing, 8.4 assists per 100 possessions. And like that is a tangible difference for a point guard and for somebody that's going to facilitate. His willingness to get the ball to Jokic, to get the ball to Michael Porter, to set up Jamal Murray has been really important. And I also think that just the energy that he brings on a consistent basis has been really important. Are there going to be things that I disagree with on a possession-to-possession basis? Absolutely. And I'm going to probably have some issues with some of the times when, because he's going to go through a shooting slump at some point. Like you said, 36% from three is probably not going to hold up. What I will say is that the Nuggets have empowered him and put him into a position where he can be a better version of himself. Last year with the Clippers, he was never going to be a great version of himself after they traded for James Harden. They already had Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. How were they going to give him the ball and put him into positions to succeed with off-ball cutters and movers and rollers and a dynamic, greatest of all time big man kind of thing? That was never going to happen. So him playing well with Jokic doesn't surprise me at all.
I mean, I'll say this. I think the fit makes a lot of sense. I love the cuts. I love the split action that he runs. I love using him in the inverted pick and roll. I think is really good. Like he does genuinely fit well with Jokic relative to some other players. It's just very hard for me to ever really, this is always my thing. And I think it's funny that some players get credit for playing with Jokic. It's like, oh, but look at his on court when he plays with Jokic. And then other players, it's like, well, yeah, of course it's high. He played with Jokic, and it's entirely dependent on whether or not you're like a favorite child or not of the person.
Whether your name is Contavious Caldwell-Pope or not.
It's less a matter of that, and it's like I'm not even thinking about this year, right? Where it's like, I mean, Christian is like the guy where it's like, yeah, but like when he plays with Jokic, it's great. So that's all that matters. And that's just not the same kind of deal. I will say that like Westbrook has like they're -8 in his minutes this year. And that's
like net rating.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's bad. It's really bad. Like for that to be that bad when he's played with Jokic as much as he has is not good. I don't care about the off court because it's plus 13.9 because I'm like, yeah, because the starters are great. Starters are awesome.
Yeah. Let me just go
look
up Bruce Brown's numbers real quick.
And so what's interesting here, actually, and I'm gonna give Swipe a credit on this because I do think this is really important. As much as like I think he's been a little insane about Dario, he's not wrong here. Russ without Dario is plus 0.4. Like if he just doesn't play with Dario Saric, he's plus 0.4 overall. So the question there is like, all right, but that's with Nikola a lot of the time. So what does it look like when he's not with either one? That's the problem. He's minus 13 when he's not with either one of it. When he's not with Jokic and he's not with Dario, he's minus 13. It's just that when he's with Dario, they're minus 31 net.
Good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
not good.
You got to cut out some of the bad stuff, and like this is the problem where Denver's roster is now, where Deron Holmes was somebody that they could have thrown out there. And like, can you imagine the fit between Russ and Deron Holmes? I can. I think that sounds freaking awesome. Can you imagine the fit between Russ and like the upgraded version of current DeAndre Jordan? Absolutely. Like whatever that is, I think that would be pretty good. And just the way that, like, if you could get somebody that moves reasonably well and is a big target on the roll, that would be nice. They don't have that. And so they have to work with what they have. I still wonder, and you're gonna fight me on this. What does it look like when Aaron Gordon is playing backup 5? What does it look like? Can they get to that at some points? Does Russ AG pick and rolls with Jamal as kind of a second option? Does that move the needle at all? I don't know.
People, I will say this: after we argued about it, people really thought you won that argument. Like they were very
right.
They were very adamant about this. I don't want Aaron Gordon to die, and that's okay. Like, it's fine. You guys want him to die. That's cool. It's a shame. Russ.
Well, here's the thing. Against the Lakers last night, can Aaron Gordon guard Christian Coloco?
Yes.
Without dying?
Yeah, but
That's
what about
the majority of backup centers now?
That's not the bad. I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I don't find that to be accurate whatsoever. If he's facing the Minnesota Timberwolves, is he facing that, or is he facing Naz Reid?
Is Naz Reid like actually posting him up and like?
No, I'm not talking about
go to the rim.
You're always doing this where it's like you envision. It's not about that. It's about the rebounds. It's about the screening, and it's about all of the jostling that goes on. It's like about that action. It's not at all about post ups. Like no one post up. I'm not arguing that anybody post up. It's just not about that, about the physical toll that it takes.
Yeah.
Like if Aaron Gordon was like, no, there's no difference. Like, it's totally fine. Like, there's no bad matchup for me. I feel totally fine. But Aaron Gordon's like, no, I want to die a little bit inside. Like, he didn't say that, but like, I've talked to him after these Wolves games.
Yeah.
And I think like what the player says should matter like a little bit.
It should, but also they don't have other great options. And I tend to think here's the thing. If they can get to DeAndre Jordan in one of every 3 games, then they'll survive the regular season. They'll be able to get through it. They'll be able to find a way. I hope that they can maybe they'll get back to Zeke Naji at some point, but Dario with Russell Westbrook has not been good enough. That's not Russell Westbrook's fault. Like, Russ needs somebody that is functional, and that's just not who they have.
I want to ask you this. Is there any value in your mind? I've kind of mean this of waiving certain players and eating the money.
I mean, can they stay under the second apron and sign somebody? If they can, then the answer is absolutely.
Okay. All right.
We don't really have to go too deeper than that.
We'll talk MPJ a little bit more later this week because he's been so awesome. He deserves like a big. We'll do that on Wednesday.
3 assists per game for Michael Porter. That's the one thing I will say right now. Whatever else people want to talk about, his availability has been there. The passing and the willingness to pass is there. He had a pass to Jamal Murray last night, an extra pass where he could have taken the pull-up and it would have been fine. But he set up Jamal, who had been struggling in the corner. And that means something when there have been so many times the other way where Jamal has kind of hesitated a little bit about making that pass. Mike didn't. Mike has been the ultimate team player.
Really has been. He really has been. And I think that really matters for sure. What do you think of this Knicks game tomorrow?
Tough matchup. I don't know how they're going to match up with the Brunson cat pick and roll personally. No, I am not referring to waiving Murray. Is that what you're
I'm sorry. I have a wild. This is like breaking. This is breaking stat nerd news. I have a wild stat for you.
Okay.
There's no way that well, maybe you know this. I can't believe that you're not saying it constantly. So Ken Patterson in our chat here at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets asks, what's Murray's plus minus when not with Jokic? Question mark. He's plus 2.6. Yeah. 2.06. They've won the minutes with Murray on and Jokic off. I'm going to have to think about that.
Hasn't been that many of them. But
I gotta go sit in a dark corner and think about that. It's 158 minutes. It's not nothing at this point in the season.
The
like if we're gonna say all these, if we're gonna say the number of shots that Jamal Murray has taken is a big enough sample to criticize him, 158 minutes is enough to be like, what? They're plus?
He has been making good plays outside of shooting the basketball. Like that, people don't want to hear that, but it is true. And like it's so much more about shooting the basketball right now. Like I just want to see him get back to a good place where he is caring and like not caring, because he does care obviously, but like where he can shoot the basketball effectively and efficiently. But the plus minus is it's better than I think people expect.
You want to know the weirdest one?
What?
He's minus without Dario. He's plus 5.04 in 100 minutes with Dario Saric without Nikola Jokic.
Because I'm very adamant about this. I think that, and I think that Dario, and we'll talk about this in another episode, but I think that Dario should be the spot starter for Jokic and then shouldn't play otherwise.
Huh. Okay. I'm just blown away by this. The Knicks, if Towns plays, Towns is questionable for this game. If Towns, obviously, if Towns doesn't play, it's a huge thing. If Towns plays, I'm going to be very interested. Towns always goes super hard at Jokic trying to prove something. We'll see if he's past that after the playoff win, if he's kind of like learned, or if he does it again, because that's how he picks up fouls. If he picks up fouls, then it's Jokic versus Jericho Sims. And
or
that
OG Anunoby. Like,
yep. That's going to be interesting. Knicks are going to play their starters a ton, and they're going to their bench is going to be pretty good, even without Miles McBride. That's tough. They are coming off of the Utah game. They lost in Utah over the weekend. Weird game for them. Yeah. And this is the altitude consecutive set. They got a day off, but this is a tough spot for them on a West Coast road trip. So we'll see how this one goes. We'll have post game for you after the game. And then on Tuesday, Swipa will give you his thoughts. Then we'll be back at it on Tuesday night with No Jinx. We'll record that. Actually, it'll post in the morning. We're recording No Jinx on Tuesday nights. And then here's what will happen. We will do a show. We'll have No Jinx on Wednesday, no show Thursday for the holiday. And then Swipa and I, depending on Swipa's availability, we'll do one on Friday. If not, one of us will do a show on Friday. And then we'll have post games. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you go to youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Follow Ryan on Twitter at NBA Blackburn. Are you on Blue Sky yet?
I am. I'm rolling over there. Not posting as frequently, but I want to get involved.
That's great. Check me out at HB Basketball on Blue Sky. We'll see you guys again next time here on Locked On Nuggets.